The first question I've got here is from Vic, who's from Sydney. And he's asked, our legal updates get decent website traffic, but nobody subscribes to the mailing list. Any tips for converting these readers into actual subscribers? So let's focus on the first part of the question, which is you're publishing legal updates, you've got decent website traffic, and nobody's subscribing. So my first recommendation before we talk about how to get more subscribers is to look at your Google Analytics. So you want to make sure that your traffic isn't already coming from email, because that would imply that the readers are already subscribers. So we want to rule that out first. So to do that, what you're going to do is log into Google Analytics, which you obviously are aware of how to do that, because you can tell that you've got some data coming into the site. Then there's a tab on the left-hand side, engagement, and then you're going to go to pages. What I want you to do there is then click on a specific post, and you might want to do this, say, for your last 5 or 10 posts. Then add a secondary dimension. So it's going to be called traffic source or session source. And what that's going to do is give you a breakdown of where your traffic's coming from for those posts. I'd recommend giving it a bit of a long time frame as well. So you might want to look at, say, 3 months of articles, if you can do them. For all the law firms that we work with, and we've got data from about over 50 firms, I find these numbers to be a bit of a handy benchmark. And so I kind of want you to compare your site to this benchmark. And that's that, say, 70 to 75% of your traffic will come from search, so from Google. About 10 to 20%, if you're doing it, which in this case you obviously are, will come from email marketing. About 3 to 5% will come from referral traffic, which is essentially links from other websites. Another 3 to 5 will come from social media, if you're just sort of actively posting on social media. So it's quite low, probably lower than what people would expect. And then the remainder will be something called direct, which is where the tracking has been stripped out. So it might be, say, from your email signature or from bookmarks. There's a whole bunch of things that it could be from. If you're doing paid Google ads or paid social media, there'll be obviously some percentages for that, and then other numbers will be diluted a bit. But hopefully that'll give you a bit of an idea of where you're at. So I want you to look at the traffic for your blog posts and make sure that the overwhelming majority aren't coming from email as a channel. Because if they are, it means that people aren't subscribing because they're already subscribed. The next part I want you to do is look at your content and just do a bit of a sense check. And a way of doing that is to ask yourself, does it make sense for someone to subscribe? So here's a bit of an exercise. Pick your last 5 articles, just like you did with the analytics, and ask yourself, is there one type of person who would find all of those articles useful? So for example, if in your last post you have, say, an article about workplace safety law updates, say for the construction industry, and then another article on how to contest a will, and another article on, say, the risks of not having a shareholders agreement, it's pretty unlikely that one person would be interested in all those things. And as such, they're unlikely to want to subscribe to all updates. So what you need to do is have some form of segmentation in your email database. And this needs to be visible publicly. So people know that when they subscribe they're subscribing to part of a database. So when someone subscribes, make it really easy that they can identify themselves and subscribe to just that relevant content. So if we take that example I had before, that first article about workplace safety law, you might have a list that people can opt into for HR professionals, or another list for, say, the construction industry. With the contesting a will example, I actually think it's pretty hard to find an obvious sort of client or referrer that would want regular updates on the topic. Perhaps a competitor might, but it's probably unlikely that anyone else would. The shareholders agreement post, you might have a list for, say, business owners or, referrers such as an accountants. So have a think about, these type of segments that you might want to set up on your subscribe form. In terms of encouraging people to subscribe, at the end of the article, I'd recommend writing a clear call to action that directs the reader to subscribe to similar updates, like the article that they've just read. So, for example, the workplace safety post that I mentioned, you might say something at the end of the article like, we publish regular workplace relations and safety updates and host events for HR professionals. To stay current on these topics, subscribe for updates and event invitations. So it's kind of like joining the dots for them. Another method for encouraging people to subscribe is a tool called a slide-in. So slide-in's kind of like a pop-up, but pop-ups are really intrusive and most people hate them. So a slide-in just sort of comes at the bottom of the page, perhaps once they've sort of scrolled down, maybe halfway down the page. Something sort of, it's quite subtle, but it does appear. It doesn't take over the whole page. You can find website plugins to accommodate something like that. But that can be a way of encouraging more subscribers. So the basis of your question, just to wrap this up, is about asking about how do you get that traffic from search engines and social media posts into subscribers. So some of the tips I've shared should help capture that traffic, but don't forget the easiest way to build your email marketing list is probably the most obvious, and that's to make sure your firm's clients, referrers, and broader network are on those lists.